Sometimes the most successful people are the loneliest ones behind closed doors. Sometimes it takes breaking down in the middle of nowhere to discover what really matters in life. The morning had started like every other Wednesday in Avery Novak's precisely orchestrated life. Her alarm sounded at 4:43 a.m. Not 4:45, not 5 o'clock, but exactly 17 minutes before the hour, because studies showed prime numbers increased cognitive alertness by 12%. By 5:15, she'd completed her high-intensity interval workout in her minimalist downtown penthouse. By 5:50, she'd consumed her carefully measured protein smoothie while scanning overnight emails from her global team. By 6:35, she was dressed in her signature charcoal blazer, hair pulled back in a flawless chignon that cost more than most people's car payments. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Avery had built Novak Technologies from a cramped co-working space into a $3.2 billion empire in just 8 years. She was featured on magazine covers with headlines like The Algorithm Queen and Silicon Valley's Most Ruthless Visionary. At 37, she commanded boardrooms filled with investors twice her age, crushed quarterly projections, and had never missed a deadline, never backed down from a negotiation, never shown weakness. She had also never been married, never had children, and couldn't remember the last time someone had touched her without wanting something in return. The Range Rover had been her reward for closing the Henderson acquisition, $800 million that had made her competitors weep and financial analysts genuflect. The SUV was pearl white with obsidian leather interior, equipped with every technological advantage money could buy. It was beautiful, powerful, and completely isolated from the world outside its bulletproof glass, much like its owner. "Jordan, confirm the Patterson Industries presentation is loaded on all devices." Avery spoke into her Bluetooth as she navigated downtown traffic. Her hands gripped the steering wheel with practiced precision, manicured nails drumming against Italian leather. "Already done, boss," came Jordan Kim's voice through the speakers, efficient as always. "The mock-ups are flawless, the financial projections are bulletproof, and I've prepared responses for every possible objection." "And Marcus? Any intel on his counteroffer?" "He's desperate. His Q3 numbers were garbage and his board is getting restless. You've got this." Avery allowed herself a small smile. Marcus Dupree had been her shadow for 3 years, always one acquisition behind, always scrambling to match her innovation. Today would cement her dominance in the AI automation sector. Patterson Industries was the crown jewel, and she'd been courting their CEO for 6 months. Traffic slowed to a crawl as she entered an unfamiliar neighborhood. Tree-lined streets replaced glass towers. Single-story homes with actual front yards stretched along cracked sidewalks. Children's bicycles leaned against fences, painted in colors her interior designer would call aggressively cheerful. "Jesus, where am I?" she muttered, glancing at her GPS. The fastest route had taken her through what appeared to be suburbia's forgotten cousin. That's when the Range Rover began making sounds no luxury vehicle should ever make. A grinding noise erupted from under the hood, followed by a high-pitched whine that made her teeth ache. The dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. Engine warning, oil pressure, temperature gauge climbing into the red zone. Steam began rising from the edges of the hood. "No, no, no," Avery hissed, pulling over as the engine shuddered and died. She found herself parked in front of a small auto repair shop that looked like it had been built in the 1970s and maintained with love rather than money. 2 service bays housed pickup trucks that had seen better decades. Hand-painted signs advertised honest work at fair prices and, quote, "we fix what others can't." A wooden bench sat outside under a faded awning, probably where customers waited while their lives were put back in mechanical order. "Calder's Auto Repair," she read from the modest sign. "Avery, you there?" Jordan's voice crackled through the Bluetooth. "My car just died." "What? Where are you?" Avery looked around at the quiet street, feeling like an alien who'd crash-landed on the wrong planet. "Somewhere that time forgot. Look, I need you to—" "The presentation starts in 40 minutes. Marcus is probably already there, circling like a vulture." 40 minutes. Avery's chest tightened. She'd never missed a pitch, never given competitors the satisfaction of her absence. Her reputation was built on reliability, on being the person who always delivered when the stakes were highest. She stepped out of the disabled Range Rover, designer heels clicking against oil-stained concrete. The morning air hit her immediately, not the filtered, climate-controlled atmosphere of her usual world, but the honest warmth of a neighborhood waking up. Somewhere nearby, someone was brewing coffee. A dog barked lazily. A screen door slammed shut. The garage smelled of motor oil, metal shavings, and something indefinably comforting. The scent of work being done by capable hands. Classic rock played softly from a radio balanced on a red toolbox. Sunlight streamed through high windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny spirits. And there, bent over the engine of a blue pickup truck, was Sam Calder. He straightened as she entered, wiping his hands on a rag that had seen countless such cleanings. Sam was perhaps 40, with dark hair showing the first threads of silver at the temples and brown eyes that held a depth she couldn't immediately categorize. His work shirt bore the garage's logo and several stains that testified to honest labor. His jeans were faded but clean, his boots worn but well-maintained. What struck her most was his stillness. In her world, everyone moved with frantic energy, fingers constantly tapping phones, minds racing to the next deal, the next conquest. Sam moved with deliberate calm, as if he had all the time in the world and intended to use it wisely. "Can I help you?" His voice was warm, with the slight roughness of someone who'd spent years breathing air that wasn't filtered through expensive systems. "My car broke down." She gestured toward the Range Rover as if its obvious superiority should explain everything. "I need it fixed immediately." Sam glanced past her to the sleek vehicle, then back to her face. No reverence, no intimidation, just assessment. "What seems to be the problem?" "How should I know? I don't fix cars. I pay other people to make sure they work." The words came out sharper than she'd intended, but stress was making her revert to her default setting, commanding control through vocal dominance. He nodded slowly, apparently unfazed by her tone. "Let me take a look." "You don't understand." Avery followed him toward her car, her heels totally inappropriate for the rough pavement. "I have exactly 37 minutes to get to the most important meeting of my career. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm offering you more money than you probably make in a month." Sam popped the hood and peered into the engine compartment. Steam still rose from various components, and even Avery could see that several parts looked distressed. He touched nothing, just looked, with the focused attention of someone who could read mechanical languages she didn't even know existed. "When did you last have it serviced?" he asked without looking up. "I don't know, my assistant handles that." "What kind of sounds was it making?" "Bad ones." Sam straightened and looked at her for the first time with something that might have been amusement. "Bad ones." "Look, I don't have time for 20 questions." Avery pulled out her phone, showing him the screen. 34 minutes. "Fix my car in 10 minutes, or I'm calling a helicopter." "A helicopter?" "Yes. This neighborhood probably hasn't seen one since Vietnam, but I'll make it happen." Sam studied her face for a long moment, and she had the unsettling feeling he was seeing things she'd rather keep hidden, the desperation beneath the demands, the panic beneath the polish. 10 minutes, he repeated. "Or leave. I don't have time for maybes." Something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not offense, but a kind of quiet acceptance that made her stomach flutter with unexpected nerves. "All right," Sam said simply. "Let's see what we can do." Inside the garage, Sam moved with the fluid efficiency of someone who had performed this dance 1,000 times. Avery hovered beside him, checking her phone every 30 seconds like a woman possessed. The presentation materials felt heavy in her briefcase. Marcus was probably already charming the Patterson Industries board, probably already positioning himself as the reliable choice. 28 minutes, she announced. Sam didn't respond. He'd connected some kind of diagnostic device to her Range Rover's computer system, and lines of code were streaming across a small screen. His fingers moved over the keyboard with surprising dexterity for hands that were clearly more accustomed to wrenches than technology. "Is that going to take long?" she pressed. 2 minutes for the full diagnostic. His voice was maddeningly calm. "But I already see the problem." "What is it? How bad? How expensive?" The questions tumbled out in her usual rapid-fire style. "It's not bad at all." Sam unplugged the device and walked to a pegboard, covered with tools arranged in perfect order. "Your intake manifold gasket has a small leak. which caused a sensor to throw false readings. The computer shut down the engine as a safety precaution. Avery blinked. That's it. That's it. He selected a specific wrench with the precision of a surgeon choosing a scalpel. The repair is simple, but your system will need a few minutes to reset afterward. How few is a few? 5 minutes, maybe 7 if the computer is feeling stubborn. She watched him work, struck by the economy of his movements. No wasted motion, no dramatic flourishes. Sam approached the engine like a craftsman who understood that rushing led to mistakes, and mistakes led to bigger problems down the road. "You seem awfully confident," she said, unable to keep the skepticism from her voice. "This is a very expensive vehicle." "I know." He glanced at her over the raised hood. "I've worked on 3 others this year, same problem each time." 3 others? In this neighborhood? People drive through, cars break down. Sam shrugged, tightening something with practiced precision. Money doesn't make engines immune to physics. Despite herself, Avery found herself studying him more closely. His hands were broad and capable, with small scars that spoke of years working with unforgiving machinery, but they moved with a gentleness that surprised her. When he handled the more delicate electronic components, his touch was almost reverent. "There." He lowered the hood with a soft thud. "Now we wait for the reset." Avery checked her phone again. 18 minutes. "The presentation will wait." "You don't understand the business world. The presentation won't wait. The competitors won't wait. The board of directors certainly won't wait for some random CEO who couldn't manage to get her own car to a meeting on time." Sam leaned against the workbench, crossing his arms. "What kind of company do you run?" "Technology. Automation specifically. We help businesses streamline their operations, eliminate inefficiencies, maximize profit margins." "Eliminate people." The words hit harder than they should have. "We eliminate redundancies. We create opportunities for workers to develop new skills, move into more meaningful roles." "Uh-huh." Sam's expression remained neutral, but she sensed judgment lurking beneath the surface. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said, more defensively than she'd intended. "I've created thousands of jobs. My company employs 800 people directly, and our clients employ millions more because we help them stay competitive." "I'm sure they do." "Are you mocking me?" "No, ma'am, just listening." The simple honesty in his response disarmed her. When was the last time someone had just listened to her without wanting something in return, without calculating how her words might benefit them? Her phone buzzed. Jordan's name flashed on the screen. "Novak, where are you?" "Marcus just walked into the building with a full presentation team. He's actually wearing a tuxedo." "Who wears a tuxedo to a morning meeting?" "Marcus is an idiot," Avery said automatically. "Are the Patterson people there yet?" "CEO just arrived. She's asking about you specifically." Avery's heart hammered against her ribs. Jennifer Patterson had been courting offers for months, playing suitors against each other like a master chess player. Today was supposed to be Avery's checkmate moment. "Stall them. Tell them I'm reviewing some last-minute financial projections to sweeten the deal." "How long do you need?" She looked at Sam, who was now checking something under the dashboard. "How much longer?" 3 minutes for the reset, then you're good to go." 3 minutes, she told Jordan. "Avery, are you okay? You sound different." "Different." The word stuck in her mind as she hung up. Different how? She was still the same driven executive who had woken up before dawn, still the same woman who had built an empire through sheer force of will. But something was shifting, like tectonic plates moving deep underground. "Try starting it now," Sam said. Avery slid into the driver's seat, her hands shaking slightly as she pressed the ignition button. The Range Rover purred to life immediately, all dashboard warnings extinguished. Engine running with the smooth confidence of German engineering. "I don't believe it," she breathed. Sam appeared at her window. 5 minutes total. Your computer is happy again." She stared at him, this man who had just solved her crisis with such casual competence that it felt almost supernatural. "How much do I owe you?" $75. Avery laughed. Actually laughed. For the first time in weeks. $75? I was prepared to pay you $1,000. The repair cost $75. She pulled out her wallet, extracting a stack of hundreds. "Here, take $500. You just saved my company's biggest deal." Sam looked at the money, then back at her face. "The repair cost $75, he repeated gently. But you did it in 5 minutes. Under pressure, you deserve a bonus. I did the job I know how to do. That deserves fair payment, not a bonus. There was something in his voice. Not pride exactly, but a quiet dignity that made her hand freeze halfway to his. In her world, everyone had a price. Everyone wanted more, better, faster. But this man was refusing her money, not because he didn't need it, but because he hadn't earned it. I don't understand you, she admitted. Most people don't, at first. She handed him exactly $75, feeling strangely unsettled by the transaction. Thank you, really. You have no idea how important this was. I hope your meeting goes well. Avery put the Range Rover in drive, then hesitated. What's your name? I mean, your first name. Sam. Sam. She tested the name, liking the way it felt solid and unpretentious on her tongue. I'm Avery. Nice to meet you, Avery. She was about to drive away when she noticed a warning light flickering on her dashboard. Not an engine problem, but something with the onboard computer system. Damn it. Sam had noticed too. He approached her window again. The reset didn't take completely. Your system needs about 10 more minutes to fully recalibrate, or that warning light will keep coming back. 10 minutes. Avery closed her eyes, doing rapid mental calculations. If she left now and the car broke down again during the presentation, she'd look like an incompetent fool. But if she waited, Marcus would have 10 minutes to work his sleazy charm on the Patterson people. How sure are you that 10 minutes will fix it? Completely sure, but if you drive it now, you'll be back here this afternoon with the same problem. Avery stared at the garage around her, at this pocket of the world that operated according to rules she didn't understand. Rules where $75 was $75, where competence was measured in honest work rather than quarterly profits, where a man would rather be right than rich. Okay, she heard herself saying, I'll wait. Avery had never been good at waiting. Waiting was for other people, people who hadn't clawed their way to the top of a $3.2 billion empire through sheer force of will and strategic ruthlessness. Waiting was inefficiency made manifest. Dead time that could be spent making calls, reviewing projections, or crushing competitors. But here she was, sitting on a wooden bench that had probably been built during the Carter administration, watching Sam Calder move through his domain with the unhurried grace of someone who had never heard of quarterly reports. The garage revealed itself to her in layers as she sat there, trapped by automotive necessity. What had initially struck her as simply old-fashioned now showed itself to be lovingly maintained. The tools were organized with military precision. The floor, though stained with decades of honest labor, was swept clean. Hand-drawn pictures were taped to a bulletin board near what appeared to be a small office area. Crayon masterpieces featuring stick figures and rainbow houses. Children's art. Sam had a child. "Daddy, don't forget I have show and tell tomorrow," came a voice from somewhere deeper in the garage. Not live, but recorded. Sam's phone, lying face up on the workbench, was playing what sounded like a voicemail message. "I want to bring the butterfly we found, okay? Mrs. Rodriguez says dead ones are okay as long as they're pretty. This one is really pretty, Daddy. It has blue spots." Sam smiled as he listened, the expression transforming his face completely. The careful neutrality he'd maintained with Avery dissolved, replaced by something warm and unguarded. Love, she realized with a start. Pure, uncomplicated paternal love. "Save that butterfly carefully, Mia Bug," he said to the recording, as if his daughter could hear him. "We'll make sure it's show and tell ready." The message ended, but Sam's expression remained soft for several seconds afterward. When he noticed Avery watching, he didn't look embarrassed or try to explain. He simply returned to his work, that private moment shared without apology. How old is she? Avery found herself asking. 7. Almost 8, according to her, though her birthday isn't until December. She sounds sweet. She is. Too smart for her own good sometimes, but sweet. Sam glanced at the clock mounted above his workbench. "I pick her up from school at 3:30. Every day. No exceptions." There was something in the way he said it. Not defensive, but definitive. A line drawn in the sand that no amount of money or pressure could cross. Avery tried to remember the last time she'd had a non-negotiable commitment that wasn't work-related. The last time she'd put anything before a deal, a meeting, a strategic advantage. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She couldn't. Her phone rang, shattering the relative peace of the garage. Marcus Dupree's name flashed on the screen, and she felt her blood pressure spike immediately. "Novak," she answered, her voice automatically shifting into corporate battle mode. "Avery, darling, where are you?" Marcus's voice oozed false concern through the speaker. "The Patterson people are getting restless. Jennifer keeps checking her watch. Very unprofessional to keep clients waiting, don't you think? I'm reviewing some additional financial incentives. Tell Jennifer I'll be there in 15 minutes with an offer she can't refuse." "Oh, but that's the thing, sweetheart. I don't think you will be." Something in his tone made her stomach clench. "What are you talking about?" "Well, since you're apparently indisposed, I took the liberty of presenting our preliminary offer. And I have to say, Jennifer seems very interested. Very interested indeed." "You son of a bitch." Now, language, Avery. This is just business. You taught me that, remember? When you stole the Morrison account right out from under me last year?" Avery was on her feet, pacing the small confines of the garage like a caged animal. "That was different. Morrison came to us?" "Details, darling. The point is, opportunity waits for no one, not even the great Avery Novak." His voice turned mockingly sweet. "But don't worry. I'm sure there will be other acquisitions. Smaller ones, perhaps. More suitable for someone who can't seem to manage her own schedule." The call ended, leaving Avery staring at her phone in disbelief. 8 years of careful relationship building with Patterson Industries, 6 months of strategic courtship, hundreds of hours of preparation. All of it potentially destroyed because her car had chosen this moment to remind her that even technology moguls were subject to the laws of physics. "Bad news." Sam's voice was gentle, non-intrusive. "My competitor is trying to steal my deal while I'm stuck here." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "The one in the tuxedo?" Despite everything, Avery almost smiled. "Jordan told you about that? Your assistant called here looking for you. Seemed concerned." Sam set down his wrench and gave her his full attention. "This deal means a lot to you." "Everything. It means everything." The words came out more raw than she'd intended. "Patterson Industries has proprietary algorithms that could revolutionize predictive manufacturing. Combined with our AI platform, we could corner the entire automation market within 5 years. And that's important because?" The question was so simple, so innocent, that it stopped her cold. Because what? Because market dominance was the goal she'd been chasing for 8 years? Because crushing competitors gave her a rush better than any drug? Because building an empire was the only way she knew how to prove she mattered? "Because it's what I do," she said finally. "It's who I am." Sam nodded slowly, the way people do when they're processing something deeper than the surface conversation. "What happens if you don't get it?" Avery realized she'd never seriously considered that possibility. Failure wasn't part of her vocabulary. "I don't know." "The world doesn't end?" "My world might." She meant it as hyperbole, but as the words left her mouth, Avery realized there was more truth in them than she wanted to acknowledge. Her identity was so completely wrapped up in professional achievement that she couldn't envision herself without it. Who was Avery Novak if she wasn't the CEO who always won, the woman who never backed down, the algorithm queen who bent entire industries to her will? Across the street, she noticed a small cafe with hand-painted signs advertising homemade pie and coffee that didn't come from machines that cost more than cars. A woman emerged from the front door, mid-50s, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and an apron that had seen better days but was clearly loved. The woman spotted Sam through the open garage door and waved. "Rosa," Sam called back, "how's the morning rush treating you?" "Like a gentle massage compared to my 3 teenagers," Rosa replied, approaching with a steaming cup in each hand, fresh coffee for my favorite mechanic in his. She paused, taking in Avery's designer outfit in obvious distress. "Distinguished guest." "Avery, this is Rosa Martinez. She owns the cafe across the street and makes the best coffee in 3 counties. Rosa, meet Avery." Her car decided to take an unscheduled break. Rosa extended one of the cups to Avery with a warm smile. Car trouble is the universe's way of forcing us to slow down, usually happens right when we need it most. Avery accepted the coffee, surprised by its rich aroma and the genuine warmth in Rosa's eyes. When was the last time a stranger had offered her something without expecting anything in return? "Thank you," she said, meaning it more than she had meant anything in weeks. "Sam tells me you're in some kind of business crisis," Rosa continued, settling onto the bench beside Avery with the comfortable familiarity of someone who had appointed herself the neighborhood's unofficial therapist. "A competitor is trying to steal a deal while I'm stuck here waiting for my car to reset. And that's terrible because?" There was that question again, asked with the same gentle directness Sam had used, as if the answer wasn't obvious, as if there might be other ways of looking at the situation. "Because I've worked 8 years to get to this point," Avery said, hearing the frustration in her own voice. "Because this deal would cement my company's position as the industry leader. Because losing it would mean Marcus wins, and Marcus is a soulless parasite who would sell his own grandmother for market share." Rosa sipped her coffee thoughtfully. And what happens after you cement your position as industry leader?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, then what? You'll be the biggest fish in the pond. Then what's the next goal?" Avery opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. The next goal was more. Always more. Bigger deals. Higher profits. Greater market dominance. An endless ladder with no final rung. No moment of arrival where she could stop climbing and simply exist. For the first time in years, the relentless forward motion of her ambition seemed less like drive and more like running from something she couldn't name. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. "Marcus presenting now. Jennifer Patterson looks interested. What do you want me to do?" Avery stared at the message, feeling something crack open in her chest, a hairline fracture in the foundation of everything she'd built her life on. "I don't know," she whispered, and wasn't sure if she was answering Jordan's question or Rosa's. "Come on," Rosa said, standing and brushing imaginary dust from her apron. "Your car needs time to think, and you need time to breathe. Sam, bring her across the street. I've got fresh apple turnovers that are still warm." Avery looked at her phone again. Jordan had sent 3 more increasingly frantic messages about Marcus's presentation, each one making her chest tighter. "I should really stay here and make some calls." "The calls will still be there in 20 minutes, Sam said quietly. He was wiping his hands on that same rag, but his attention was focused entirely on her face. "When was the last time you ate something that wasn't a protein bar or a business lunch?" The question caught her off guard. When had she last eaten? She'd had the smoothie this morning, but before that, yesterday's lunch meeting with potential investors, where she'd picked at a salad while discussing market penetration strategies. The day before that, coffee and a handful of almonds at her desk while reviewing quarterly projections. "I eat," she said defensively. "I'm sure you do." Sam's tone held no judgment, just gentle observation. "But when did you last sit down somewhere that didn't have conference tables and enjoy a meal?" Avery couldn't remember. The realization hit her like a small punch to the stomach. Rosa had already started walking toward her cafe, moving with the confident stride of a woman who expected to be followed. After a moment's hesitation, Avery found herself walking alongside Sam across the quiet street, her heels clicking against asphalt that had probably been laid when she was in elementary school. The cafe was everything her usual haunts were not, where she frequented sleek establishments with names like Quantum and Apex. This place was simply called Rosa's. The front window displayed handwritten specials on brown paper bags, and the door chimed with an actual bell when they entered. Inside, the walls were painted warm yellow and covered with local artwork, not the carefully curated pieces that decorated her penthouse, but honest paintings of desert landscapes and family portraits that had clearly been created with love rather than commercial appeal. Mismatched tables and chairs filled the space, each one bearing the gentle wear patterns of countless conversations and shared meals. The smell hit her immediately: fresh bread, cinnamon, coffee that had been brewed rather than engineered. Her stomach growled audibly, betraying how long it had been since she'd wanted food rather than simply consuming fuel. "Sit anywhere you like," Rosa called from behind a counter that looked like it had been crafted from reclaimed barnwood. "Sam, your usual spot is open." Sam led her to a table by the window, where she could see his garage across the street. Her Range Rover sat in the parking area like a white whale beached in unfamiliar waters. "This is nice," she said, and meant it. The words felt strange in her mouth. When had she last described anything as simply nice? Her vocabulary had been trained for superlatives. Revolutionary, game-changing, unprecedented. But nice felt honest in a way those words never did. Rosa appeared with 2 plates, each bearing a golden pastry that steamed gently in the morning air. "Apple turnovers made with fruit from my sister's orchard. No artificial anything, no preservatives, no corporate shortcuts." Avery took a bite and closed her eyes involuntarily. The pastry was flaky and buttery, the apple sweet with just enough tartness to make her taste buds sing. It was possibly the most delicious thing she'd eaten in years. "This is incredible," she said. "Family recipe," Rosa replied, settling into the chair across from them. "My grandmother taught my mother taught me. I'll teach my daughters when they're ready to listen, instead of rolling their eyes at everything I say." "You have daughters?" 3 teenagers. 15, 16, and 17. "They think I'm hopelessly old-fashioned, because I still make things from scratch." Rosa's smile was fond despite her words. "They'll understand someday, when the world gets too fast and they need something real to hold on to." Avery's phone buzzed against the table. Jordan's name flashed on the screen, followed by a preview of the message. "Marcus is showing financial projections. Need guidance ASAP." She reached for the phone automatically, but Sam's hand gently covered hers. "5 more minutes," he said quietly. "Whatever's happening over there, 5 minutes won't change the outcome. You don't understand. This deal will either happen or it won't." His brown eyes held steady on hers. "But right now you're here. When was the last time you were fully present somewhere instead of thinking about the next thing?" The question lodged in her throat like a stone. She couldn't remember. Even during supposedly relaxing activities, the few she allowed herself, her mind was always racing ahead to the next challenge, the next opportunity, the next mountain to climb. "Sam's right," Rosa said gently. "I see people rush through here every day, wolfing down food they don't taste, talking on phones about problems they can't solve from here. They miss everything: the flavor of real food, the warmth of actual conversation, the simple pleasure of sitting still for a moment." "But I have responsibilities," Avery protested. 800 employees depend on me. Shareholders trust me with their investments. I can't just sit here eating pastries while my competitor steals my deal." "And what happens if he does?" Rosa asked. "My company loses market share. Our stock price drops. I lose credibility with investors. And then? And then we have to work twice as hard to recover. We'll have to find other opportunities, make different strategic moves." "And then?" Avery stared at her, frustrated by the circular questioning. "And then we rebuild and try again. So the world doesn't end." "No, but you'll have learned something. About resilience, maybe. About adapting when things don't go according to plan." Rosa's voice was kind but firm. "Sometimes losing something we think we need teaches us what we actually need." Avery's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Jennifer Patterson herself. Her heart hammered as she looked at the screen. "I have to take this," she said, already reaching for the phone. Sam's hand remained gently on hers. "Do you?" "It's the CEO of Patterson Industries, the woman I've been courting for 6 months. And she's calling you why?" "Probably to tell me she's going with Marcus." The words tasted bitter in her mouth. "Or maybe to ask where you are. Maybe to tell you she's not interested in what he's offering." Sam's thumb traced gently across her knuckles, the touch so simple and unexpected that it sent electricity up her arm. "Maybe to remind you that real business relationships aren't built on who shows up first to a meeting." The phone stopped ringing. Almost immediately, it started again. "She's persistent," Rosa observed. "She's thorough. It's one of the things I respect about her." Avery looked at the screen, torn between everything she'd been trained to do and this strange new impulse to stay exactly where she was. "What does your gut tell you?" Sam asked. "My gut? Not your business training or your strategic planning, your actual instinct." Avery paused, trying to access a part of herself she'd been ignoring for years. Below the layers of corporate conditioning and calculated responses, what did she actually feel? That if Jennifer Patterson is the kind of CEO I think she is, she won't make a decision based on Marcus showing up in a tuxedo and giving a flashy presentation. And that I've been so focused on winning this deal that I might have forgotten why I wanted it in the first place. The admission surprised her. When had she last questioned her own motivations? When had she last looked beyond the immediate goal to examine the deeper purpose? Sam smiled, and the expression transformed his entire face. Now you're thinking like someone who builds things that last, instead of just building things that win. Her phone had stopped ringing, but it buzzed with a text message. Against every instinct she'd developed over 8 years of corporate warfare, Avery let it sit unread. Instead, she took another bite of Rosa's apple turnover and let herself taste it completely. Let herself notice the way afternoon sunlight slanted through the cafe windows, casting everything in warm gold. Let herself appreciate the gentle humor in Sam's eyes and the maternal kindness radiating from Rosa. Let herself, for perhaps the first time in years, simply be present in a moment instead of racing toward the next one. "Tell me about your daughter," she heard herself saying. "Mia." Sam's face lit up with the same warmth she'd seen when he listened to the voicemail. "What would you like to know?" "Everything." "Mia is 7 going on 35, Sam began, settling back in his chair with the easy comfort of a man who never tired of talking about his child. "She's got this way of asking questions that make you realize you don't understand anything you thought you understood." Avery found herself leaning forward, drawn in despite herself. "Such as?" "Last week she asked me why people say, 'have a good day,' when most of the day is already over by the time they say it. Then she wanted to know if wishing someone a good day actually makes their day better, or if it's just something people say because staying quiet feels rude." Rosa laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "She sounds like a philosopher in training." "She is." Last month, she decided that homework was an unfair tax on childhood and presented her teacher with a formal petition to reduce the workload. Mrs. Rodriguez was so impressed with her logic that she actually agreed to cut back on busy work. Despite everything, the stolen deal, the looming corporate crisis, the complete disruption of her carefully ordered world, Avery smiled. A real smile, not the calculated expression she wore for board meetings and investor calls. "She sounds remarkable." "She is." Sam's expression grew softer, tinged with something that might have been grief. "She's got her mother's curiosity and stubborn streak. Lena used to say Mia could argue water into flowing uphill if she put her mind to it." "Elena was your wife?" Sam nodded, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. "She died when Mia was 3. Car accident on the highway during a rainstorm. Some teenager was texting and didn't see the red light." The simple, devastating honesty of the statement hit Avery like a physical blow. She'd spent years crafting careful responses to difficult questions, layering meaning in corporate speak and strategic ambiguity. But Sam spoke about the worst moment of his life with the same straightforward clarity he brought to everything else. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it more than she'd meant any condolence she'd ever offered. "Thank you. It took time to figure out how to keep going. How to be both parents to a little girl who kept asking when mommy was coming home." Sam's voice remained steady, but Avery caught the slight tremor underneath. "But Mia needed me to figure it out, so I did." "Is that why you didn't expand the business? I noticed you're the only mechanic here." Sam looked surprised by her observation. "How did you know I could expand?" "The way you work, the diagnostic equipment, the organization of everything here." Avery gestured around the garage visible through the window. "You could easily have 3 or 4 employees, maybe multiple locations." "But you don't." "I could," Sam agreed, "and I used to think about it. Elena and I had plans for franchising, maybe opening a chain of family-friendly auto shops across the state. But Mia gets out of school at 3:30. She has piano lessons on Tuesdays, soccer practice on Thursdays, and she likes to do her homework at the desk in my office while I finish up the day's work." Sam's smile was gentle but absolute. "No amount of money is worth missing those things." Avery stared at him, trying to process a worldview so foreign to her own that it might as well have been transmitted from another planet. But the lost opportunities, the potential revenue streams, the competitive advantages of scale. What about them? Don't you want more? Don't you want to build something bigger than yourself? I am building something bigger than myself, Sam said quietly. I'm raising a human being who will hopefully make the world a little better than she found it. I'm being the kind of father who shows up, who listens, who puts her needs before his ambitions. But professionally, I fix things that are broken. I help people who are stranded get back on the road. I run an honest business that serves my community. Sam leaned forward, his brown eyes serious. How much bigger does it need to be? Before Avery could respond, her phone rang again. This time it wasn't Jennifer Patterson or Jordan. It was Marcus, probably calling to gloat about his victory. She declined the call without hesitation. That felt good, she admitted. First time you've ever hung up on a competitor? First time I've ever hung up on anyone for non-strategic reasons. Rosa had been listening to their conversation with the patient attention of someone accustomed to serving as an unofficial therapist for her customers. Now she spoke up, her voice thoughtful. You know what I think? I think you're both more alike than you realize. How so? Avery asked. You both build things. Sam builds relationships with his daughter, with his customers, with this community. You build companies and innovations that change industries. Different scales, different tools, but the same fundamental drive to create something meaningful. Avery considered this, surprised by how much sense it made. I never thought about it that way. The question is, Rosa continued, what happens when building becomes the only thing that matters? When you're so focused on the next project that you forget to live in what you've already created? The words hit closer to home than Avery wanted to admit. When had she last felt proud of what she'd accomplished, instead of anxious about what came next? When had she last celebrated a victory instead of immediately pivoting to the next challenge? Her phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. Jennifer Patterson wants to reschedule the presentation, says she's not making any decisions today. Marcus is livid. What should I tell her? Avery stared at the message, feeling something shift in her chest. Jennifer wasn't choosing Marcus. The deal wasn't lost. But more than that, Jennifer was demonstrating exactly the kind of thoughtful decision-making that had made Avery want to work with her in the first place. Good news? Sam asked, reading her expression. Maybe. The CEO I've been courting wants to reschedule instead of making a hasty decision. Sounds like a smart woman. She is, which makes me wonder why I was so panicked about losing her to someone like Marcus in the first place. Because panic is easier than trust, Rosa said gently. Panic gives you something to do. Rush around, make calls, try to control outcomes. Trust requires you to have faith that things will work out the way they're supposed to. Avery's phone rang again. This time, it was Jordan. I should probably take this, she said, but without the urgency that had driven her earlier. Jordan, what's the situation? Jennifer Patterson wants to meet with you privately tomorrow morning. She said, and I quote, I'd like to speak with the CEO who's confident enough in her proposal to arrive when she's ready, rather than when she's frantic. She said that? Word for word. Apparently Marcus's presentation was… Jordan paused, and Avery could hear the smile in her voice. She described it as compensating for something. And the tuxedo? She asked him if he was planning to perform magic tricks or close a business deal. Despite everything, Avery laughed. Schedule the meeting for 9 a.m., and Jordan? Block out my afternoon. The whole afternoon? But you have the Morrison follow-up call and the investor relations briefing. Reschedule them. Are you feeling okay? Avery looked around Rosa's cafe, at Sam's gentle smile and Rosa's knowing eyes, at the simple pleasure of sitting still in a place that smelled like cinnamon and honest work. I'm feeling like I might be starting to figure something out. After she hung up, Sam leaned back in his chair, studying her face. So the deal isn't dead. No, it's not. In fact, it might be stronger than ever. And how does that feel? Avery paused, examining her emotional state with the same analytical approach she brought to market research. She expected to feel relieved, triumphant, vindicated. Instead, she felt something unexpected, calm. It feels less important than it did this morning. Not unimportant, Sam clarified, just less consuming. Exactly. She looked at him with curiosity. How did you know that? Because I've been where you are. Different circumstances, but the same feeling of everything depending on one outcome. When Elena died, I thought my world had ended because the future we'd planned was impossible. It took time to realize that losing one future just meant I had to find a different one. And did you find a different future? Sam gestured around the cafe, toward his garage visible through the window, toward the life he'd built from the pieces of the one he'd lost. Still working on it, every day. Outside, clouds were gathering, threatening the kind of sudden desert storm that could turn dust into mud and send everyone scurrying for cover. Avery noticed the shift in light. The way the approaching weather made everything seem more intimate, more immediate. "I should probably head back," she said, though she made no move to leave. "Probably," Sam agreed, also remaining firmly seated. "My car should be ready by now." "Should be. I have calls to make, emails to answer." "I'm sure you do." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the first fat raindrops splatter against the cafe window. Avery tried to remember the last time she'd watched rainfall without thinking about how it might affect her commute or her schedule. "Sam," she said finally, "would you be willing to drive me to my meeting tomorrow? I mean, if you don't have other plans. I could pay you, of course." "Not for money," he interrupted gently, "but I'd be happy to drive you." "Why?" Sam smiled, and she realized it was the first completely unguarded expression she'd seen from him. "Because I'd like to see how this story ends." The Patterson Industries boardroom was everything Avery's usual environment promised to be. Glass walls stretching floor to ceiling, a table that could have served as a landing strip for small aircraft, and chairs that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The view from the 32nd floor showcased the city spread out below like a circuit board, all clean lines and calculated efficiency. But as Avery sat across from Jennifer Patterson the next morning, she couldn't stop thinking about Rosa's mismatched tables and the way sunlight had danced through cafe windows that hadn't been cleaned by a professional service. "I have to admit, I was intrigued by your absence yesterday," Jennifer said, her sharp blue eyes studying Avery with the focused attention of someone accustomed to reading people for weaknesses. Marcus Dupree seemed to think it indicated a lack of commitment to this partnership. "Marcus Dupree has never had an unscheduled moment in his life," Avery replied calmly. "He mistakes rigid planning for competence and availability for value." Jennifer's mouth quirked upward slightly. "An interesting perspective. Tell me, what was so important that you missed what Marcus described as the opportunity of a lifetime?" A week ago, Avery would have deflected the question, spun some story about last-minute strategic insights or unavoidable client emergencies. Instead, she found herself answering with the same straightforward honesty Sam had modeled. "My car broke down in front of a mechanic shop, and I met someone who reminded me why I got into this business in the first place. Which was to solve problems that matter, to build technology that improves people's lives rather than just improving profit margins." Avery leaned forward, feeling more centered than she had in months. "I started Novak Technologies because I wanted to prove that artificial intelligence could make work more human, not less. That automation could free people to do more meaningful things, not just eliminate their jobs entirely." "And somewhere along the way you lost sight of that vision?" The question was asked without judgment, but it hit like a surgeon's scalpel, precise and devastating. "Somewhere along the way, I got so focused on winning that I forgot what I was trying to win for." Jennifer nodded slowly. "I've been there. 20 years ago, I was so determined to prove myself in a male-dominated industry that I became more ruthless than any of the men I was competing." For the next hour, Avery found herself speaking with a passion she hadn't felt in years. She talked about AI that empowered workers instead of replacing them, about automation that freed people to focus on creativity and problem-solving instead of repetitive tasks. She described technology that strengthened communities rather than disrupting them, partnerships that created value for everyone involved rather than extracting it from the vulnerable. It was the same presentation she'd prepared weeks ago, but delivered with a completely different energy. Instead of trying to impress Jennifer with her ruthless efficiency, she was sharing a genuine vision of what they could build together. When she finished, Jennifer was quiet for several minutes, staring out at the city below. "6 months ago, I would have been concerned by what happened yesterday," she said finally. "A CEO who missed a crucial meeting because of car trouble would have seemed unreliable, unprofessional. And now? Now I'm wondering if a CEO who's never had an unplanned moment might be too rigid to adapt when circumstances change." Jennifer turned back to Avery with a smile. "I'm also curious about the mechanic who made such an impression on you." "Why?" "Because the woman who walked in here today is different from the one I've been meeting with for 6 months. More grounded somehow, more human." Avery thought about Sam's steady hands and patient eyes, about the way he'd refused her overpayment and offered to drive her without expecting anything in return. He reminded me that competence doesn't require cruelty and that being successful doesn't mean being alone. Sounds like someone worth knowing. He is. Jennifer extended her hand across the gleaming conference table. I'd like to move forward with our partnership, Avery, not because your proposal is the most aggressive or your projections are the highest, but because I believe we share the same fundamental goal, building something that matters. As they shook hands, Avery felt a satisfaction deeper than any she'd experienced closing previous deals. This wasn't just about winning. It was about choosing to win in a way that aligned with who she wanted to be, rather than who she'd been told she needed to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sam. How did it go? Instead of her usual immediate response, Avery let the message sit while she completed the partnership discussion with Jennifer, scheduled follow-up meetings with both teams, and actually listened to Jennifer's stories about her daughter's upcoming science fair project. Only when she was back in the elevator, descending toward street level, did she reply, "Better than I hoped. Are you free for dinner? I'd like to meet Mia." The response came back immediately. "She'll love that. Rosa's making her famous lasagna tonight. Consider yourself invited." As the elevator doors opened onto the building's marble lobby, Avery realized that for the first time in years, she was more excited about dinner with near strangers than she was about closing a multi-million-dollar deal. The thought should have worried her. Instead, it felt like the first truly smart decision she'd made in months. Avery arrived at Sam's garage at exactly 5:30 p.m., having spent the afternoon in a state of nervous anticipation she couldn't quite name. She'd closed the Patterson deal, handled 3 crisis calls from her development team, and rescheduled 4 meetings, all tasks that should have consumed her attention completely. Instead, she'd found herself wondering what a 7-year-old girl who presented formal petitions to her teacher might think of a woman who lived in a penthouse apartment and hadn't eaten a home-cooked meal in 3 years. The garage had been transformed. The service bays were clean, the tools organized with even more military precision than before, and someone had swept every visible inch of concrete. Through the office window, she could see a small figure bent over what appeared to be homework, surrounded by colored pencils and construction paper. "You came," Sam said, emerging from beneath the hood of a restored classic Mustang. His work clothes had been replaced by clean jeans and a button-down shirt, the color of desert sky, and his hair showed signs of recent combing. The effort he'd made to look presentable for dinner touched something in Avery's chest. "I said I would." "In my experience, people from your world often say things they don't mean when they're caught up in the moment. What makes you think I was caught up in the moment?" Sam's smile was gentle but knowing. "Because yesterday morning you were a woman who issued ultimatums to strangers and measured time in productivity units. Today you're here for dinner with people you barely know instead of celebrating the biggest deal of your career at some expensive restaurant." Avery considered this. Maybe I'm exactly where I want to be. Maybe you are. Before she could respond, a small voice called from the office. "Daddy! Is that the lady from the coffee shop?" "Come meet her and find out," Sam called back. The child who emerged from the office was everything Avery had imagined and nothing she'd prepared for. Mia Calder was 7 years old with her father's brown eyes and dark hair that refused to be completely tamed by what appeared to be recent brushing. She wore jeans with grass stains on the knees, a t-shirt featuring a cartoon dinosaur wearing glasses, and mismatched socks, one purple with yellow stars, one striped in rainbow colors. But it was her expression that stopped Avery cold. Mia looked at her with the frank, unguarded curiosity of someone who hadn't yet learned to hide her thoughts behind polite masks. There was intelligence there, and warmth, and something that might have been wisdom beyond her years. "You're prettier than I thought you'd be," Mia announced without preamble. "Mia," Sam said gently, "what have we talked about?" "That I should think before I speak, because words can't be taken back once they're out there." Mia didn't look particularly chastened. "But I did think about it, and I decided it was a compliment, so it was okay to say." Despite herself, Avery laughed. "Thank you. I think you're prettier than I expected too. Daddy says you have a job where you tell computers what to do." "Something like that. I create programs that help computers think more like people." Mia's eyes lit up with interest. "Can you make them think like kids?" "What do you mean?" "Kids ask lots of questions that adults think are silly." Like why is the sky blue instead of purple? Or why do we say, after dark, when dark doesn't go anywhere, it just is? Mia perched on the edge of Sam's workbench with the casual confidence of someone who belonged there completely. If computers could think like kids, maybe they'd ask better questions. Avery stared at this small person who had just articulated something her entire AI development team had been struggling with for months: how to build curiosity into machine learning algorithms. "That's actually brilliant," she said slowly. "Mia's full of insights like that," Sam said, pride evident in his voice. "She sees things the rest of us miss because we've been trained to think they're not important." "Like what?" "Like why people say 'How are you?' when they don't actually want to know how you are," Mia offered. "Or why adults get upset when things don't go exactly like they planned, even when the thing that happens instead might be better." The second observation hit uncomfortably close to home. How many opportunities had Avery missed because they didn't fit her predetermined plans? How many unexpected moments had she dismissed as inefficiencies rather than recognizing them as gifts? Speaking of things not going according to plan, Sam said Rosa called. Apparently her oven decided today would be a good day to break down, so dinner is moved to the diner down the street. "The one with the really good pie?" Mia asked hopefully. "The one with the really good pie," Sam confirmed. "Is that okay with you?" he asked Avery. "It's not exactly what I promised." Avery thought about the elegant restaurants where she usually conducted business dinners, places with names like Fusion and Ethereal, where the portions were microscopic and the conversations revolved around market penetration strategies. Then she looked at Mia's excited face and Sam's slightly apologetic expression. "It sounds perfect," she said, and meant it completely. As they walked the 3 blocks to the diner, Mia positioned herself between the adults, chattering about her day with the unself-conscious enthusiasm of someone who assumed the world was interested in everything she had to say. "Mrs. Rodriguez said my butterfly presentation was the best one she'd ever seen, and Tommy Martinez said he wished his dad knew as much about cars as mine does, and Sarah Chen brought her hamster for show and tell, but it escaped during lunch, and we spent 40 minutes looking for it behind the radiator." "Did you find it?" Avery asked, surprised by how genuinely curious she was about the fate of Sarah Chen's hamster. "Eventually. It was hiding in the art supply closet eating construction paper. Mrs. Rodriguez says hamsters aren't supposed to eat paper, but Mr. Whiskers seemed pretty happy about it." "Mr. Whiskers?" "The hamster. Sarah named him after her grandfather, who apparently also had whiskers and liked to hide in small spaces." Mia looked up at Avery with serious eyes. "Do you have any pets?" "No, I travel too much for work." "That's sad. Everyone should have something that's happy to see them when they come home." The simple statement hit Avery like a physical blow. When was the last time anyone had been genuinely happy to see her arrive anywhere? Her assistant Jordan was always pleased when she showed up for meetings, but that was professional satisfaction, not personal joy. Her doorman greeted her politely, but that was his job. Her apartment was beautifully appointed and completely quiet, welcoming her each evening with the same sterile perfection she'd left that morning. "Maybe you could get a fish," Mia suggested helpfully. "Fish don't need walking, and they're pretty good listeners." "What makes you think fish are good listeners?" "Because they never interrupt or try to solve your problems for you. They just swim around and look interested in whatever you're saying." Sam caught Avery's eye over Mia's head, his expression amused but understanding. "She's got a point. Sometimes the best listeners are the ones who can't offer advice." The diner turned out to be exactly what Avery had expected, and nothing like what she was prepared for. Red vinyl booths with duct tape patches, a jukebox that probably hadn't been updated since the 1980s, and a laminated menu featuring comfort food that would have horrified her personal trainer. The kind of place she would have dismissed as irrelevant to her lifestyle just 48 hours ago. But as they settled into a corner booth, Mia insisting that Avery sit by the window so she could see the street life, Avery found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't experienced in years. The conversations at neighboring tables were about Little League schedules and grocery store sales, rather than quarterly projections and hostile takeovers. The lighting was warm rather than strategically calculated. The pace was unhurried rather than optimized for efficiency. "What do you recommend?" she asked Mia, who had clearly appointed herself as social director for the evening. "The meatloaf is really good, and the mashed potatoes are better than Rosa's, but don't tell her I said that." Mia leaned across the table conspiratorially. And the pie is legendary. Daddy says legendary means really, really good, but in a way that people will tell stories about. What kind of pie? All kinds. But the apple pie a la mode is what dreams are made of, according to Mr. Henderson, who comes here every Tuesday for 30 years. Avery tried to remember the last time she'd eaten pie, let alone pie a la mode. Her usual desserts were things like deconstructed fruit tarts and molecular gastronomy experiments that looked like art installations and tasted like disappointment. Then pie a la mode it is. As they ordered meatloaf and mashed potatoes all around with promises of legendary pie to follow, Avery found herself studying the easy rhythm between Sam and his daughter. The way he listened to her stories with complete attention, the way she automatically handed him the salt before he asked for it, the way they shared silent jokes through meaningful glances. It was intimacy of a kind she'd never experienced, built on thousands of small moments and shared experiences. The kind of connection that couldn't be scheduled or strategized into existence, only cultivated through presence and patience. "What's your family like?" Mia asked as they waited for their food. "I don't really have family, not anymore. Everyone has family somewhere. My parents died when I was in college. Car accident, like your mom." The words came out more easily than they ever had before. "I don't have any siblings and I've never been married." Mia considered this with the seriousness of someone who understood that some sadnesses couldn't be fixed with cheerful suggestions. "That must be lonely sometimes," she said finally. "Sometimes," Avery admitted. "But you have friends, right?" Avery paused, mentally reviewing her social contacts. Business associates, professional connections, people she saw at industry events and charity galas. But friends? People who called just to check in, who remembered her birthday without calendar reminders, who cared about her well-being rather than her usefulness. "Not really," she said quietly. "Well, now you have us," Mia announced with the matter-of-fact confidence of someone who had just solved a simple problem. "Daddy always says friends are just family you get to choose, and I choose you." The declaration was so unexpected, so generously offered without conditions or expectations, that Avery felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. When was the last time someone had chosen her for reasons that had nothing to do with her professional value? "Thank you," she managed. "I choose you too." Sam reached across the table and squeezed her hand gently, the touch brief but warm with understanding. In that moment, surrounded by the chatter of the diner and the simple pleasure of pending meatloaf, Avery felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the possibility of belonging somewhere without having to earn it through achievement. For the first time since she'd built her empire, she wondered if success might be less about what you accumulated and more about who chose to sit with you in vinyl booths and share their legendary pie. They were halfway through dinner when the storm hit with the sudden ferocity that desert weather was famous for. One moment they were enjoying meatloaf and easy conversation. The next, rain was hammering against the diner windows with the intensity of nature making up for lost time. "Wow," Mia breathed, pressing her nose to the glass. "Look at it, come down." Avery followed her gaze to see water coursing down the street in impromptu rivers, transforming the quiet neighborhood into something resembling a disaster movie. Her Range Rover, parked across from Sam's garage, was barely visible through the sheets of rain. "This could last a while," Sam observed, checking the weather app on his phone. "Desert storms don't mess around." "How long is a while?" Avery asked, thinking about her schedule for tomorrow morning. 3 conference calls with the Patterson Industries integration team, a presentation to her board of directors about the new partnership, and a strategy session with her development team about implementing the community-focused approach she'd promised Jennifer. Could be 20 minutes, could be 2 hours. Weather doesn't really negotiate with human schedules out here. Mia giggled. Weather doesn't care about anyone's plans. Remember last month when it rained during the school carnival and everyone had to run all the games inside the gymnasium? Mrs. Peterson said it was chaos, but I thought it was better than the original plan because the ring toss was way easier when you didn't have to worry about wind. Chaos can be better than the original plan, Sam agreed, his eyes meeting Avery's across the table. Sometimes the unexpected thing turns out to be exactly what you needed. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and orthopedic shoes, appeared at their table with a fresh pot of coffee. "Looks like you folks are going to be here for a while. Lucky for you, Betty's apple pie is worth waiting out any storm." "Betty?" Avery asked. That's me. Been making pies for this place for 37 years. Same recipe my grandmother taught me, same love baked into every slice. Betty's smile was warm with the confidence of someone who knew her worth. You want that a la mode, like the little one suggested? Please. As Betty bustled away to fetch their dessert, Avery found herself studying the diner with new eyes. The duct-taped vinyl wasn't just functional. It was evidence of a place that had served its community long enough to accumulate honest ware. The outdated jukebox wasn't behind the times. It was a keeper of memories, playing songs that had soundtracked decades of first dates and family celebrations. The laminated menus weren't cheap. They were practical tools for a business that prioritized substance over style. Penny for your thoughts, Sam said quietly. Just thinking about how different this is from my usual environment. Better or worse? Avery considered this carefully. Her usual restaurants were objectively superior in every measurable way. Better service, higher quality ingredients, more sophisticated presentations, more prestigious clientele. But sitting here, listening to Mia explain why chocolate chip pancakes were a perfectly reasonable dinner option, she felt something she rarely experienced in those polished establishments. Contentment. Different in ways I'm still figuring out, she said finally. Betty returned with 3 plates of apple pie that looked like they belonged in a Norman Rockwell painting. Generous slices with golden crusts and cinnamon-scented filling, topped with scoops of vanilla ice cream that were already beginning to melt into creamy puddles. Oh my goodness, Avery said after her first bite. The pastry was flaky and buttery, the apples were perfectly spiced, and the vanilla ice cream was the real thing. Rich and dense, and probably made with actual cream rather than engineered dairy substitutes. Right? Mia said around her own enormous bite. Legendary. What makes it so good? Avery asked Betty, who was refilling their coffee cups with the practiced efficiency of someone who had perfected her craft through decades of repetition. Love, patience, and butter, Betty replied without hesitation. My grandmother always said you can't rush good pie. The apples need time to release their juices, the crust needs time to develop flavor, and the baker needs time to pay attention to what the pie is telling her. What does pie tell you? When it's ready, when it needs more time, when something's not quite right. Betty's expression was serious despite the whimsical subject matter. Good baking is like any other relationship. You have to listen more than you talk. As Betty moved on to other tables, Avery found herself thinking about relationships and listening. How much of her life had been spent talking, giving presentations, making demands, issuing directives, and how little time she'd devoted to actually hearing what other people needed or wanted. She's right about the listening thing, Sam said, as if reading her thoughts. Applies to more than just baking. Such as raising kids, running a business, fixing cars, building anything that's supposed to last. Sam took a sip of his coffee, which was surprisingly good for diner coffee. Most problems tell you what they need if you're quiet long enough to hear them. What about people? Especially people. Outside, the rain continued its relentless assault on the windows, but inside the diner felt increasingly cozy. Other customers had given up on rushing out into the storm and settled in for the duration. Conversations flowed more slowly, punctuated by comfortable silences and the occasional laugh. The jukebox played gentle classics that nobody seemed to have specifically selected, but everyone seemed to appreciate. This is nice, Mia said, unconsciously echoing Avery's thoughts from the day before. It feels like when we have breakfast on Saturday mornings and there's nowhere else we have to be. Nowhere else you have to be, Sam repeated thoughtfully. When was the last time you felt that way? He asked Avery. She started to give an automatic answer about vacation time or scheduled relaxation, then stopped to actually consider the question. When had she last felt truly present in a moment instead of mentally racing ahead to the next obligation? I honestly can't remember. That's sad, Mia said with the brutal honesty of childhood. Everyone should have places where they don't have to be anywhere else. What makes a place feel like that? Avery asked, genuinely curious about this 7-year-old's wisdom. When the people there like you for who you are instead of what you do. When you don't have to perform or impress anyone. When you can just be yourself without worrying if that's enough. The simplicity of the explanation took Avery's breath away. For years, she'd been searching for some elusive sense of satisfaction, assuming it would come from the next deal, the next achievement, the next milestone. But maybe what she'd actually been seeking was this: a place where she could exist without having to justify her presence through productivity. "What are you thinking about?" Sam asked gently. "How much energy I spend trying to prove I deserve to take up space in the world. And? And wondering what I might have room for if I stopped." Thunder rumbled overhead, long and low, as if the sky was considering her words. Through the window, she could see that the parking lot had become a temporary lake, with cars sitting like islands in several inches of standing water. "Looks like we're going to be here a while longer," Sam observed. "I should probably make some calls, let people know I might be late tomorrow if this keeps up." But even as she said it, Avery made no move to reach for her phone. For the first time in years, the idea of being unreachable felt more appealing than staying connected. "Or," Mia suggested, "you could tell me about what you do all day, not the business parts that adults always talk about, but the parts that make you happy." "What makes me happy about my work?" "Yeah, like, Daddy gets happy when he fixes something that was really broken, and the customer smiles when they see their car running again. What makes you smile at your job?" Avery paused, surprised by how difficult the question was to answer. When had she last smiled at work for reasons that weren't related to competitive victory or financial gain? "I like solving puzzles," she said slowly, "finding elegant solutions to complicated problems. And I used to like building things that helped people do work they actually cared about instead of just busy work." "Used to like?" "Somewhere along the way, I got more focused on building things that made money than building things that made people's lives better." "But you could do both, right?" Mia's logic was as clear as her father's. "Make money by making people's lives better." "Yes, I think I could. I think that's what I want to try to do." "Good," Mia said with satisfaction. "Because money is only useful if it helps you do things that matter." "Who taught you that?" "Daddy. He says money is like a tool. It's not good or bad by itself, but what you build with it determines whether it was worth having." Avery looked at Sam, who was watching his daughter with the same expression of quiet pride she'd noticed before. "You've raised quite a philosopher." "She raised herself, mostly. I just tried not to get in the way of her natural wisdom." "Natural wisdom?" "Kids know things adults forget. Like how to be curious without being afraid of the answers. How to offer friendship without calculating what they might get in return. How to find joy in ordinary moments, instead of always waiting for extraordinary ones." As if to illustrate his point, Mia began using her spoon to create abstract art with the melted ice cream on her plate, completely absorbed in the simple pleasure of making patterns in vanilla sweetness. "I want to learn that," Avery said quietly. "Which part?" "All of it. How to be present, how to listen, how to find joy in ordinary moments." She gestured around the diner, where people were settling in for an extended stay with remarkable equanimity. "How to see storms as opportunities instead of obstacles." "It takes practice," Sam said, "and patience with yourself when you slip back into old patterns." "What if I don't know how to be different?" "Then you start small, one moment at a time, one conversation at a time, one choice at a time." Outside, the rain was beginning to ease slightly, though it was still too heavy for anyone to consider venturing out. But inside the diner, surrounded by the gentle hum of conversation and the lingering sweetness of legendary pie, Avery found herself hoping the storm would last just a little longer. Because for the first time in years, she was exactly where she wanted to be with exactly the people she wanted to be with, doing exactly nothing productive at all. And it felt like the most important work of her life. By the time the rain finally stopped, it was nearly 9 o'clock, and the diner had taken on the warm, drowsy atmosphere of a community storm shelter. Mia had fallen asleep in the booth, her head pillowed on Sam's arm, one small hand still clutching her spoon as if protecting her claim to any remaining pie. "She's beautiful," Avery whispered, studying the child's peaceful face. In sleep, Mia looked even younger than her 7 years. Her features soft with the absolute trust of someone who had never doubted that the adults in her life would keep her safe. "She is," Sam agreed quietly, smoothing a strand of dark hair away from his daughter's forehead with practiced gentleness. "She's also going to be mortified tomorrow when she realizes she fell asleep in public. She considers it undignified for someone who's almost 8. How are we going to get her home?" Very carefully. She usually wakes up just enough to walk if I'm patient with her. Sam's smile was tender with years of experience. The trick is not to rush the transition. As if responding to their conversation, Mia stirred slightly, blinking confused eyes in the diner's warm lighting. "Daddy? Are we still waiting for the rain?" "The rain stopped, sweetheart. Time to head home." "But I was having such a good dream," she protested sleepily. "I was teaching Avery how to make mud pies, and she was really good at it, even though she was worried about getting her hands dirty." Despite herself, Avery laughed. "Even in your dreams, I'm neurotic about cleanliness?" "What's neurotic?" Mia asked, now alert enough to be curious. "It means worried about things that probably don't matter," Sam explained diplomatically. "Oh, then yes, you were being neurotic about mud. But it was okay because the mud pies were beautiful anyway." As they prepared to leave, Betty appeared with a cardboard container. "Thought you might want some pie for later," she said, handing it to Avery. "Storm nights make people hungry at unexpected times." "Thank you. How much do I owe you?" "Nothing, honey. First storm pie is always free for newcomers. House rule." Avery started to protest, but Sam caught her eye and shook his head slightly. "Thank you, Betty. That's very kind." Outside, the world had been transformed. The streets gleamed with reflected streetlight, and the air smelled clean and fresh, washed free of dust and heat. Puddles reflected the neon signs from the diner and the garage, creating an impressionist painting in asphalt and rainwater. "It's beautiful," Avery said, surprised by how magical the ordinary neighborhood looked in its storm-washed state. "Desert storms do that," Sam replied, taking Mia's hand as they navigated around the larger puddles. "They clean everything, make it new again." They walked slowly back toward the garage, none of them eager to end the evening. Mia chattered about the storm, about Betty's pie, about how much she'd enjoyed having dinner with someone new. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Avery found herself smiling more than she had in weeks. "Can Avery come to our house?" Mia asked as they reached Sam's truck. "I want to show her my butterfly collection and my rock garden." "It's getting pretty late, Bug," Sam said gently, "and Avery probably has work to do." Avery checked her phone automatically, noting 17 missed calls, 43 unread emails, and 12 text messages of varying urgency. Her normal response would be to immediately begin triaging the communications, prioritizing crises and scheduling responses. Instead, she found herself saying, "Actually, I'd love to see your collections." The drive to Sam's house took only 5 minutes, but it felt like traveling to a different world. Where Avery's penthouse was all clean lines and minimalist sophistication, Sam's neighborhood was tree-lined streets and houses with front porches, where people had left toys in their yards, and Halloween decorations were already appearing despite it still being September. Sam's house was a modest 2-story with white trim and a red door, surrounded by a garden that showed evidence of careful tending without professional landscaping. Wind chimes hung from the porch eaves, and a wooden swing moved gently in the post-storm breeze. "It's lovely," Avery said, and meant it. The house looked like a home, lived in, loved, real in ways her sterile apartment had never managed to achieve. Inside was even better. The furniture was comfortable rather than impressive, chosen for durability and function rather than designer pedigree. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator, bookshelves held an eclectic mix of repair manuals and fairy tales, and family photos documented years of ordinary moments made precious by attention and love. "This is my room," Mia announced, leading Avery upstairs with the pride of someone giving a tour of a palace. The bedroom was everything a 7-year-old girl's sanctuary should be. Purple walls covered with drawings and certificates, shelves displaying rocks and shells and other treasures, and a window seat piled with pillows and books. "And this is my butterfly collection," Mia said, opening a display case that contained dozens of specimens mounted with obvious care. "Daddy helps me identify them, and we read about where they come from and what they eat." Avery studied the collection, impressed by its organization and the detailed labels accompanying each specimen. "This is serious scientific work. I want to be an entomologist when I grow up. That's someone who studies insects." "I know what an entomologist is," Avery said with a smile. "It's a wonderful career choice. Have you thought about the research you'd like to do?" For the next hour, Mia shared her plans for studying butterfly migration patterns, her theories about insect communication, and her detailed observations about the behavioral differences between various species in her collection. Her passion was evident, her knowledge impressive, and her scientific curiosity reminded Avery of herself at that age, before she'd learned to view everything through the lens of profit potential. "She's remarkable," Avery told Sam when Mia finally went to brush her teeth. "She gets that from her mother. Elena was a biology teacher before Mia was born. She would have loved watching Mia develop this passion for science. You must miss her terribly." Sam was quiet for a moment, looking around the living room that still held traces of the life he'd shared with his wife. A throw pillow Elena had made, photographs of their early years together, a coffee mug that clearly belonged to someone who wasn't coming home. "I do. But I've learned that missing someone doesn't have to mean being stuck in the past. Elena would want Mia to keep growing, keep discovering new things. She'd want me to keep building a life worth living." "And have you built a life worth living?" "I thought I had. Until yesterday, I was pretty content with our routine, our community, our small but meaningful existence." Sam turned to look at her, his brown eyes serious. "But meeting you made me realize there might be more possibilities than I'd been allowing myself to consider. Such as sharing this life with someone who appreciates what we've built here, who could add to it without trying to replace it." The implication hung in the air between them, delicate and profound. Avery felt her heart race with a combination of hope and terror. The idea of belonging to this warm, real family was more appealing than any corporate acquisition she'd ever pursued. But it was also more frightening than any business risk she'd ever taken. "Daddy?" Mia's voice called from upstairs. "Can you come help me find Mr. Bunny?" "Be right there," Sam called back. To Avery, he said, "Mr. Bunny is a stuffed rabbit who's been her sleep companion since she was 2. He occasionally goes on unauthorized adventures around the house. You should go help her find him. Come with me." The search for Mr. Bunny took 15 minutes and involved looking under beds, behind curtains, and finally discovering the wayward rabbit in the laundry basket, apparently having jumped in with the clean towels. Mia's relief at being reunited with her bedtime companion was so genuine that Avery felt an unexpected tightness in her throat. "Thank you for helping," Mia said as Sam tucked her into bed. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Avery looked at Sam, who nodded encouragingly. "I'd like to, if that's okay with your dad." "It's very okay with me," Sam said quietly. After Mia was settled with Mr. Bunny, and a story about a princess who solved problems with science instead of magic, Sam and Avery returned to the living room. The house was quiet now, filled with the peaceful atmosphere of a family safely gathered for the night. "I should probably go," Avery said, though she made no move toward the door. "You both have school and work tomorrow. And you have meetings and conference calls and the important business of running an empire." "Yes, I do." She paused, studying his face in the lamplight. "But for the first time in years, those things feel less important than what's happening right here." "What's happening right here?" Avery took a breath, preparing to say something she'd never said to anyone before. "I think I'm falling in love with your life. With the way you've built something real and meaningful. With Mia's curiosity and your gentleness. And the way this house feels like home in ways mine never has. And I'm terrified that I don't know how to be part of something like this. That I'm too damaged by years of corporate warfare to ever learn how to be truly present, truly connected, truly here. Against. I crushed competitors, eliminated inefficiencies, and built Patterson Industries into exactly the kind of company I used to criticize. What changed? My daughter asked me a question I couldn't answer. She was 8 years old, and she wanted to know why I was always angry, not frustrated or stressed, angry. And I realized she was right. I was angry all the time because I'd built a life that required me to be someone I didn't like very much. Avery felt something twist in her chest. "How did you fix it?" "I stopped trying to be the smartest person in the room and started trying to be the most useful. I stopped measuring success by how many competitors I could eliminate and started measuring it by how many problems I could solve." Jennifer's smile was rueful. "It took 3 years to rebuild my company culture, and another 2 to repair my relationship with my daughter. But it was worth every difficult conversation and lost deal. And now? Now Patterson Industries is more profitable than ever. My employees actually enjoy coming to work, and my daughter calls me for advice instead of avoiding my calls." Jennifer leaned back in her chair. I learned that sustainable success comes from building something people want to be part of, not something they're afraid to leave. Avery digested this, thinking about her own company culture. When had she last walked through the office and seen genuine enthusiasm instead of nervous productivity? When had she last had a conversation with an employee that wasn't about performance metrics or quarterly targets? "Can I ask you something, Jennifer?" "Of course." "Why did you agree to meet with me today instead of accepting Marcus's offer yesterday?" Jennifer's laugh was genuine and warm. "Because Marcus spent 45 minutes telling me how our partnership would destroy our mutual competitors and increase market share by double digits. Very impressive numbers, very strategic thinking. But he never once mentioned how the partnership would benefit our customers or improve our products. It was all about winning market share, never about serving market needs." Jennifer's expression grew serious. "I've learned that partnerships built on shared greed don't last. Partnerships built on shared values do." "And what values are those?" "Innovation that serves people, not just profit. Growth that strengthens communities instead of exploiting them. Success that's measured by the problems we solve, not just the competitors we eliminate." Avery felt something click into place, like a puzzle piece she'd been carrying for years finally finding its proper position. "That's exactly what I want to build." "I hoped it was. Your early work suggested someone who cared more about impact than image. But yesterday, Marcus painted a picture of a CEO who'd lost her way, who'd become just another corporate shark swimming in increasingly bloody waters." "He wasn't entirely wrong," Avery admitted. "I did lose my way, but I think I'm starting to find it again." "What changed?" Avery thought about Sam's quiet competence, Rose's gentle wisdom, the way Mia's laugh had echoed through a garage that felt more like home than any boardroom she'd ever occupied. "I met someone who reminded me that success without substance is just expensive emptiness." Jennifer studied her for a long moment, and Avery had the distinct impression she was being evaluated on criteria that had nothing to do with financial projections or market analysis. "Tell me about your vision for this partnership," Jennifer said finally. "Not the revenue projections or the competitive advantages, the vision." Sam stood and crossed to where she sat on the couch, settling beside her with the same careful attention he brought to everything else. "What if you didn't have to learn everything at once? What if you could just start with tomorrow and see how it feels? What would tomorrow look like?" "Mia has a school science fair next week. She's presenting her butterfly research. She'd love to have you there if you're interested." Avery thought about her calendar, about the strategic planning sessions and investor calls that filled her days with importance and urgency. Then she thought about a 7-year-old girl sharing her passion for entomology with the same enthusiasm she'd shown for mud pies and legendary apple pie. "I'm interested," she said, "very interested." "Good," Sam said, leaning closer. "Because I'm interested in finding out what happens when the most driven woman I've ever met decides to slow down long enough to let someone love her." "You want to love me?" "I already do," he said simply. "The question is whether you're ready to let yourself be loved." For the first time in years, Avery didn't have a strategic answer, a calculated response, or a measured reply. She had only the truth, raw and vulnerable and real. "I'm ready to try." When Sam kissed her, it was with the same patient gentleness he brought to everything else. No urgency, no agenda, just the simple sweetness of two people choosing to trust each other with their carefully guarded hearts. Outside, the post-storm night settled into peaceful quiet, and inside Sam's living room, Avery discovered that sometimes the most important business decisions had nothing to do with profit margins, and everything to do with choosing love over fear, connection over control, and presence over productivity. It was, she realized, the smartest deal she'd ever made. 3 weeks later, Avery stood in the elementary school gymnasium, watching Mia arrange her butterfly display with the meticulous care of a museum curator. The science fair was set to begin in an hour, and the gym buzzed with the controlled chaos of parents helping children make last-minute adjustments to volcanoes, solar systems, and plant growth experiments. "The Monarch Migration Board needs to be exactly parallel to the life cycle poster," Mia instructed, her small hands positioning materials with scientific precision. "And the specimen should be angled so people can see the wing patterns without glare from the overhead lights." "Yes, Dr. Calder," Avery said with mock seriousness, adjusting the display case according to Mia's specifications. "I'm not a doctor yet," Mia giggled. But someday I will be. Dr. Mia Calder, entomologist extraordinaire. Sam emerged from behind the display, having spent 10 minutes untangling string lights that were meant to illuminate Mia's research photos. Extraordinaire, huh? That's a pretty big word for someone who still needs help tying her shoes. Shoe tying is a fine motor skill that has nothing to do with intellectual capacity, Mia replied with dignity. Besides, Velcro is more efficient. Avery laughed, marveling at how natural this felt, this easy family banter, this shared pride in a 7-year-old's scientific passion. 3 weeks ago, she couldn't have imagined herself spending a Thursday evening in a school gymnasium, but now she couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. Marcus is spreading rumors that you've lost your edge. Board meeting tomorrow needs to address growth strategy concerns. 6 months ago, such a message would have sent her into strategic overdrive, crafting responses and planning counterattacks. Now she simply typed back, "Schedule it for next week. I'm exactly where I need to be tonight." "Business crisis?" Sam asked, reading her expression. "Business as usual," Marcus being Marcus. She tucked her phone away without checking the 17 other notifications that had accumulated. "Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow." "Look!" Mia pointed toward the gymnasium entrance, where Jennifer Patterson was walking in with a girl who appeared to be about 10 years old. "Isn't that the lady from your big meeting?" "It is indeed." Avery waved at Jennifer, who approached with a warm smile. "Avery, I was hoping I'd see you here. This is my daughter, Emma." "Emma, this is Ms. Novak, the CEO I told you about." "The one who fixed her car and found her heart?" Emma asked, with the blunt curiosity of a preteen. "Emma?" Jennifer laughed, embarrassed. "That's not exactly how I put it." "Close enough," Avery said, extending her hand to Emma. "Nice to meet you. Are you presenting tonight?" "You..."